to maybe which program they're on, what their area of interests are, and then I'm also going to ask them to say, to identify a decision, a negative a potential negative that they've encountered in their careers and how they turn that into a positive. And Simon, do you think we could start with you?
Sure. Hello, everyone. So my name is Simon Harridge. I'm a professor at UCL in the computer science department. Did you say which program am I on? Was that what you asked?
Yes. So if you say what say you're on MDL and what you're
yeah, I'm on the MDL program, and my main interest is inverse problems, and so I've in recent years become very interested in the idea of combining, well, we sometimes call it knowledge-driven versus data-driven, or physical modeling versus learned modeling. In other words, the classical approach being that you build a model and then you discover the properties of the model, and then you try to develop inversion for it and customized regularization. And then in some classical kind of, but some popular ideas of machine learning was you can be completely agnostic about models. You don't need any knowledge, you just use data. And so the general idea is that we want to try to get the best of both worlds, and this is very much what we've been doing in this program. So yes. And
maybe a potential negative in your career and how you turned it into a positive.
Okay, well, I think we will make choices that don't quite work out. I mean, one thing I might mention, so one of my probably best cited papers, it was quite a short letter, where I was proving something about what could be recoverable in a certain kind of nonlinear problem. And the paper was rejected quite quickly when I submitted it, because it sort of went against rubbed people up quite a bit the wrong way. But I simply wrote back and said, you can't reject this paper because it's important and you should get reviewers who actually understand it. And they changed their mind. And so that's now one of my best cited papers.
Well, that's a very useful lesson in itself. Don't take no for an answer with rejection, and not just putting it into somewhere else, but challenging the reviews of the referees. So that's in itself is a very useful piece of advice. Thank you. Karen, can we go on to you now, please? Do you want to introduce yourself and maybe talk about turning a negative into a positive?
Yeah, hello. My name is Karen Bauer. I'm in the Cluster Algebras and Representation Theory program. Well, like as a history, I grew up in Switzerland, where I did my undergrad at the University of Zurich. Then I moved on to the University of Basel for PhD. And I did postdoc positions at the ETH, at the UCSD, at the University of Leicester. And then I was a SNSF fellowship professor at ETH. So that's a fellowship which is not tenure track. And then afterwards, I was full professor at the University of Graz for almost 8 years. And now I'm at the University of Leeds. So my research is in algebra with a lot of combinatorics and geometry as tools for algebraic objects. It's a bit difficult with finding like a negative which we turn into a positive. So I thought of two situations. One was like, why did I change between undergrad and PhD? That's quite uncommon still in Switzerland. That was basically because I didn't get along with my undergraduate advisor, which was terrifying at the time, because you had to find someone else, but which made it, the effect was that I had to go and talk to professors at several universities and really made a good job. I mean, happened to meet 4 other professors and could make a very informed choice. So that was good. And the other one, which is much later in my career, is when I was an SNF professor at ETH, I started interviewing for permanent positions in Germany and Austria, and often got, well, mixed outcome. And then a friend said, if you're really not that confident, you should take coaching lessons. So, because apparently my CV was good, but I always did bad in the interview. And so I took on like coaching for a few sessions, and the next interview was positive, and that's how I got my first permanent job.
That also is very, very sage advice, and something I think that we should all hear about. And there's something telling about the fact that you were the same person, essentially, on paper, who was not getting the jobs as the person who then got the job following the coaching. And that says a lot about the presentation of how we present ourselves is really important. And it's not that what we've got on paper, we've got to think about how we communicate it to others. Thank you, Karen. That's really sage advice. Tatiana, could we go on to you now, please?
Hello, everyone. So I'm Tatiana Bubba. I'm a Royal Society Newton International Fellow at the University of Cambridge, where I moved actually quite recently, and like this year. And before that, I was a postdoc for a bit over 4 years at the University of Helsinki in Finland, after I got my PhD in Italy at the University of Ferrara. So like Simon, I'm in the Mathematics of Deep Learning program here at the Newton Institute. And a bit like Simon explained very, very well, I come from the inverse problem field, and in recent year I moved towards combining inverse problems theory. For me, it's especially tomographic imaging with techniques from deep learning, and by taking, as you said, the best of both worlds. Yeah. So I also gave a lot of thought about a potential negative that turned out positive. And I think for me, it mostly dates back when I had to decide about what to study at university. So back then, I didn't have a strong background in actually scientific subjects. I did study more what is called humanities in Italy, so when I first applied to university, I was convinced I would study mostly medicine and become eventually a medical doctor. And then when I applied, I didn't get in, and so I had to quickly choose another major. And a bit out of the blue, I chose mathematics, and I was rather convinced that I wouldn't even finish my first year, and I would reapply for medicine the next year. And instead, it went way better, and I actually ended up liking way more than I thought initially, and this got me here. So I think it was, one of those lucky opportunity that turned out quite well for me.
Fantastic. That's lovely to hear. But also, you converted that luck for yourself. You made that luck come good. So that's a lovely story too. Thank you, Tatiana. Chris, can we go over to you next, please? Volume.
My current position is I'm muted and no one can hear me. Right, sorry. Hello, I'm Chris Budge. My current position is I'm Professor of Applied Maths at the University of Bath. I've been at Bath for 26 years, which seems a long time now. I started life as an undergraduate at Cambridge, and then I went off to do a PhD in Oxford, and did various bits of work in industry. And then I went to Bristol, and now I've been in Bath for, say, 26 years. And I've got quite wide interests. I generally often call myself an industrial applied mathematician, so I'm interested in problems which come from industry, or solving problems for industry. And if you interpret industry very broadly, I've done a lot of work on environmental problems with the Met Office, and since lockdown I've been very much engaged with working on COVID with an outfit called VChems, which is partly based at the Isaac Newton Institute. And I, like Simon and Tatiana, part of the deep learning program at the Isaac Newton Institute. And I suppose I have two kind of interests in deep learning. A lot of my training has been in numerical analysis. So I'm interested in where ideas from numerical analysis hit deep learning. And that goes both ways. So I either taking ideas from numerical analysis and using them in deep learning, or taking ideas from deep learning and using them in numerical analysis. And I think that's really exciting. And the other area I'm interested in with deep learning is its applications to environmental problems. So in particular, whether it can help us in things like weather forecasting or climate prediction or stuff like that. So turning negative into positive, in a sense, my whole career, I think, has been based on trying to turn negatives into positives, sort of not giving up and trying to kind of learn from your mistakes. I think that's really important. But just to give an example, I once was asked to give a talk on climate change to a lot of kids. It was about 1,000 kids as a part of an operation called Maths Inspiration. And I gave this talk, and afterwards I got awful reviews from the teachers. They said that it was incomprehensible, they didn't understand a word of it, the children wouldn't be able to get anything from it at all, and what was I doing? And I was pretty upset by that, but the director of Maths Inspiration, a really great guy called Rob Easterway, said, well, let's sort of think about this and think what you can do. And so I spent a lot of time rethinking how I would present the issues of climate change and environmental work to school kids. And what was really great was not only did that help me do presentations in the future, which I hope have been a lot better, but rethinking it in that way made me think much, much harder about my own research into climate change. And I actually got a ton of new ideas from doing that in the process. So it's this business of getting bad reviews isn't necessarily a bad thing if it makes you think better about how to do what you're supposed to do. And so I thank those teachers, although I was pretty grumpy at the time.
Thank you, that's very good. And I think there's a lot to be said. If you can think about how you can frame something to explain it to children or to non-specialists, it often makes it much clearer in finalizing what is important within the problem itself, I find. So that's great. So Anna, can we go on to you, please?
Hey. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah. So yeah, my name is Ana Garcia. That's the short version. I'm a postdoc at the University of Glasgow right now, and I'm a visiting scholar here for the Cluster Algebra program. I also have a permanent position in Argentina, where I did my PhD. And so my interests are, of course, cluster algebras and representation theory. Whenever there are geometric models involved, I like that. And say I'm enjoying this cluster algebras program very much. As you see in the boards, we have a lot of pictures. So turning a negative into a positive. Okay, so my mathematical career started as a negative. I was born not at the right place, not at the right time. My family was very, very poor. Someone like me was not meant to attend university, even if universities in Argentina are free. It's just commuting and eating outside your house is already a big challenge for most families. So my first idea of studying a bachelor was one that would pay me for doing it. So it was not mathematics. So I tried to join the air control people at the Air Force in Argentina. Even if I could pass the test very well because I was a very good student, I was rejected because I'm short. So everyone who knows me here in the cluster algebra programs, they know that I'm short. So I was devastated because it technically meant that I couldn't study at a higher level or a bachelor after high school. But then I realized that I had to change the hypothesis of the problem. I had to move to a different city. I had to find like part-time jobs, and I did. And I moved to a better environment that will help me achieve going to the university. And after that, I enrolled in mathematics. And from that moment on, I could attend university and do whatever I want, and be a TA and have my salary like that. So it's just changing cities and finding new opportunities in a new place was enough for me.
I have to say that's a really inspirational story. Thank you so much for sharing that, Anna. And I think there'll be many people who watch this over time who will say, someone like me shouldn't ... And you've just shown how you can overcome those someone like me perceptions and turn them around. So that I'm in awe, I have to say. Yadira, can we come to you, please?
Yes, sure. Hi, I'm Yadira Valdivieso. I'm here in the cluster algebra program. Basically, I'm working with algebras, with graphs, with orientations, surfaces. So basically, with combinatorics things in some way. I did my PhD in Argentina, but I'm not Argentinian, I'm Mexican. And after that, I moved to Canada, then I moved to Mexico, and then I'm here in the UK. I have to say that in general, I have been really lucky because, there's a lot of people that are like give me support and possibilities to continue in my career. However, thinking about this turning negative into positive, in 2019, I stopped to do research and I decided to be a teaching fellow. But the problem was that I was working in several universities, 3 of them at the same time, and I was giving 7 different courses. So like basically I was moving around Mexico City the whole day. And well, in some way, I really enjoy it. The things that I learned about that is that I really like to do, to give classes. I really like to learn application of maths in other areas like medicine or economics or anything or something like that. And during these 2 years, I had the opportunity to apply to 2 different grants, the one of Newton International Royal Society Fellowship and the Marie Curie Fellowship, and both of them I was really lucky and I got them. So thanks to that, I'm here.
Fantastic again. That's a lovely story. Thank you for sharing. We might, in the interest of time, now go on to our next question. So let's start with an easy one. Let's go, Chris, what do you like most about being a mathematician?
What do I like most about being a mathematician? So I'm an applied mathematician, and what I really like about being a mathematician is using mathematics to help people, I suppose, to solve real problems in the real world, and not just using kind of boring mathematics, but using really interesting and exciting mathematics to solve problems. So since lockdown, as I say, I've been really engaged with working on COVID-related problems, and that's been incredibly satisfying to think I'm actually trying to make a small difference there. And as part of that is working with my wonderful team of PhD students and postdocs, and working with them and seeing how excited that they get also by solving real problems. So that's why I get excited with mathematics.
Fantastic, thank you. Tatiana, I can't see you right this second, but I think I'll be able to see you in a minute. Do you want to say what you like most about being a mathematician?
I'm also an applied mathematician, and I really like the idea of collaborating with people coming from different fields and different areas, and not just let's say, staying in the scientific community, but also with potential interaction with people working in far away, what could seem like a faraway field from mathematics. But also what I really like about our work in general, and maybe it's not so specific of mathematics, is that I can continue to do what I've been doing for most of my life. So I can keep studying and I keep discussing and I can keep kind of, you know, in a way, continuing my education for the rest of my life, I think. And this makes it like a very, very peculiar work, and not everyone has the same opportunity, in my opinion, to have this sort of flexibility to also decide to study what you want and not being forced in a direction instead of another.
That segues beautifully into my next question. Thank you. In fact, let's carry on with you, Tatiana. Maybe you can tell us about an important decision you've made during your mathematical career and what helped you in making it.
Yeah, I think there has been a couple. So right after I finished my master and I applied for the PhD, I decided to completely change a topic for my PhD. And this wasn't an easy choice to make because especially in Italy, PhD has a fixed term of 3 years, and there is really no opportunity to delay the defense. So in 3 years, you pretty much have to present what you have. And yeah, so when I decided to completely switch subject, I had to start also taking some classes I didn't take during my master, and this delayed things quite a lot for me. The first year was mostly courses, and I chose a research topic halfway through my second year. So compared to many fellow PhDs student, I was really like late, and I always felt like I wouldn't finish on time. But I'm really happy I did it, because I think like this field could suit me way better than the one I was working during my master, which was more theoretical. And yeah, and the other one was probably like during the last year. So at some point I was quite lucky, and I ended up being successful with more than one funding application I did, but the opportunity were in different countries. And on the one hand, I could stay in a place where I've been staying for many years. I was kind of getting used to the culture. I know the system, and I knew that eventually I could maybe find a permanent position also there. And on the other hand, I could move and kind of, you know, start over again, which might be exciting, but if you've done it already once, you know, it has some challenges, and it becomes a bit harder also becoming older, right? Even if I'm still, I think, quite young. So that wasn't an easy choice for me, and but I'm happy with the choice I made, which was clearly coming to the UK.
A couple of brave decisions there. Thank you. Anna, can I ask the same question of you, please? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. What's the question?
So can you tell us about an important decision you've made during your mathematical career and what helped you in making it?
So I was very encouraged by my colleagues and friends and fellow students. That was always my support. And so the key decisions that I made when I started to study mathematics for real, because I was studying like more like high school teaching degree, was like showing up in advanced classes, even if I didn't have to, even if I didn't have a right to be there like legally, but the professors would accept me anyways, and go to an advanced class and try to learn and try to pass the course anyways, and like, or go to a PhD course, even if I was not a PhD yet, and visit other universities and visit other professors and take a course there, like traveling, not being afraid to show up in advanced classes helped me a lot. And also interacting with these new people, new professors. That's what pushed me always in my career.
Cool, thank you. And then Chris, can we have a similar answer to you, or your answer to this question, please?
Yes, so as I said when I introduced myself, I've worked a bit in both academia and in industry. So when I was doing my undergraduate at Cambridge, I was sponsored by a company and spent all my time in the summers working with them. And I worked for them for a bit afterwards. And then I did a PhD in Oxford, and then I did a postdoc in Oxford. And actually I was employed by a company called the Electricity Generating Board, but they paid for me to do a postdoc collaborating between Oxford and them. So at the end of the postdoc, well, as the end of the postdoc was approaching, I had to sort of think about things in the final year. I had to decide whether I was going to go into academia or to go and work in industry. So industry had certain advantages. It was a somewhat more kind of respectable career in a way, and the salary was significantly larger, like 50% larger than anything I'd get in academia. So I had to sort of think about this quite a lot. So you asked in your question, how did I make the decision? So what I did was I went to talk to my grandfather. So I explained, my grandfather was the nearest thing to a scientist in my family. He was an engineer, and during the war he'd done a lot of work on radar and stuff like that. And I spent several days holed up in Broadstairs where he lives, talking this all through with him. And he came up with some very wise advice. He basically said, if you go and work in industry, that's good. I mean, he worked in industry at the time. But what you'll end up doing is basically one thing. You may end up doing it very well, but you're working one thing in one narrowly defined area. Whereas if you go into academia, you've got the sort of stability to kind of explore lots of different things. And in particular, because he knew that I wanted to do something practical and work in industry, you could, from the base in academia, end up collaborating with as many industries as you like with that stability. And that's what I've done. I took his advice, initially went to Bristol and then to Bath, collaborating broadly with lots and lots of different types of industry, and doing all sorts of interesting things and learning all sorts of nice mathematics in the process. And whilst my salary may not have been as high as I would have done in industry, it's not been such a bad salary, and I've had a good time. And I hope that I've been, of more use in general by doing that than I would have been if I'd just gone to work and sat in one industry.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Can I move on to my next question? And Yadira, I might ask this for you. So when making a career decision, what non-mathematical factors did you have to take into account?
Well, in my case, my family and my partner are factors that I always take into account to make any decisions. However, I'm in some way flexible. For example, this year that I decided to start looking for a job, I started to look in Mexico because my family is there. But at some point I said, okay, you need to look into other places. So I started to look for jobs in the UK. But then I got an offer from Mexico and I decided to take it.
Cool. Thank you. Karen, can I ask the same question of you, please? So what non-mathematical factors did you need to take into consideration when you were making a career decision?
Yeah, sure. Can I share the slide? I have a slide.
Please. I love it. Let's just see if...
Can you see that?
Yes, love it.
Well, I have to admit, I had to do a similar thing a few years ago. So I was just copying from then. Well, that should show, like the orange yellow part should show that there are a lot of decisions in the career. And in some ways a bit similar as like Yadira I mean, I was often taking into account family when taking decisions. So I have 3 short things which you may see here. Like when I did finish my PhD, I got a fellowship to go to UCSD as a postdoc. But then my partner needed to stay in Switzerland a bit longer, and we already had 2 children. So in the end, I found myself a 1-year job at ETH, so we could defer my postdoc, and that changed. I mean, that made that I had some contacts at ETH later, so, but at the beginning it was a bit difficult. So that would be around, do you see my arrow? Yeah, that would be around here. Then, and I guess later it was always decisions, do we really want to move with the children again? Because like some of my kids went to school in 3 or 4 different countries. So that would be all these steps around here. And then around the last step where eventually I left Graz to go to University of Leeds, we decided to move the family to Switzerland. And that was partly because my mother is not very young and it's nicer to be near her. So these are the non-mathematical decisions.
They're lovely, and it's a gorgeous way to share that. Thank you so much. I think that I will certainly take that thinking on board for myself. So I'm going to ask a potentially more challenging question, Simon, if I may. Is there a decision that you've made where you would do things differently if you had the chance again?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, I'm one of these people that didn't make very sort of strategic decisions about things much. I tend to see what I find interesting, work in things that I'm interested in, and just enjoy doing some work. Whereas, you know, it is important to publish things and to think strategically and to maximize impact. So I think in my early part of my career, I was publishing things, but maybe just in conferences and just talking to people and giving results out rather easily. And I think I would have, if I'd thought about it better, I would have targeted more impactful dissemination channels. But it hasn't turned out too bad in the end.
That's very good advice. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I was very lucky that my DPhil supervisor, the very first thing he said to me was, we are going to turn you into a publishing house. Start typing now. So that was good advice that I received. Let's go on to a slightly different aspect. And maybe, Anna, can I come back to you for this one? So how about community? How is community important in mathematics, and how could we build greater community and greater support for one another in this subject?
Well, I wish I knew the answer, but yes, community is important. As you see, most papers and most publications and all the conferences and all the meetings are organized by several people. There's a lot of public relations in math now, and we're not sitting alone proving a theorem and that's it. So we need to build networks, and so one thing I would like to see more in mathematical conferences is like an environment like the one we see here at the Newton Institute. You know, when you go to a conference and you get the chance to interchange experiences with other students or other professors from other places and so on, then you have a lot of like technical talks, 20 minutes, half an hour, 10 minutes break, continue next talk, and so on and so on and so on, and everything's like super automatical, very straight to the point, and we never have this time to communicate and to express ourselves and to debate mathematics and to fill the boards with our ideas with random people around the conference. So I would like to have like more meetings that are not super technical conference, but gatherings with mathematicians from different backgrounds.
And have you found that your time here at INI has given you that time and that space to just...
Yes.
That's very good. I'm hoping that some of our online participants will have been able to share some of this magic as well. I think it's going to be diminished experience for them, but we haven't forgotten you. We've really been thinking about what we can do. And in a way, part of this panel session is trying to do that, is to make this sense of community from a social perspective as well as from an academic perspective, to make everyone feel engaged and feel that they share common ground with others. Simon, could I get you to talk to the same question about community and its role within mathematics?
I think it's absolutely crucial, especially a bit like Chris. I'm very applied. I think you may, and when you're young, think you can do everything, but you soon realize that you can't. So you need to. It's so valuable to have people that are complementary. If you can find people that you can work with who don't mind you talking nonsense to them, and they will sort of explain the things you don't understand, and vice versa, it's really valuable. And I mean, this kind of environment is amazing here, because even in this slightly restricted format, you're getting a chance to meet everybody who has interest in your topic from all around the world. And you need that support so much, because you can't work in isolation. You have to, well, you obviously need peer review for things, for grants, for papers, but you also need it for your own sanity, to see if what you're doing makes any sense or is any use to anyone. Otherwise, you become very isolated. So I think it's completely crucial. I don't think it could work without very comprehensive networking.
Cool, thank you. Karen, I know from the feedback that we've had from participants on the program, how you've been a really great mentor to early career researchers. So can I ask you what advice you would give someone starting out as a mathematician, and particularly if they're in an underrepresented group?
Well, I think it's always important, to me it was important to talk to people in math, and that has been very difficult at the beginning because I was very shy. Didn't want to talk to people. I mean, I know my partner would tell me that I came back from a conference very miserable because I didn't talk to anyone. So, and that was more than once. So I think to me it's important to talk to people within the community, because that makes them realize you're around and helps them remember you, because there are many people who are very good, and in the end you need to build up a network of people who look at your work and who will link to you. And then for my own sanity, I think it's important to talk to people in your family or friends which give you different advice. Like there are many steps in your career where you might go to industry or really quit doing research. And to me, it was always good to discuss with people.
Very good.
And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I felt a bit, of course, I'm female, obviously, so that's an underrepresented group, but also my background is not academic. And so it wasn't expected that I would go to university. And so that was also, took me a long time to realize that it doesn't really matter. So just try to go on and take one step at a time.
That's very good, thank you. Yaldira, can I ask the same question of you? What advice would you give to someone?
Well, and thank you. Yeah, well, in some way, Karin and Anna mentioned a few things, but I think for me, the most important thing is to try to find people that you feel confident with, because sometimes the environment is not good, but if you have people that are your friends and that you can talk to, then at least you don't feel like apart. And also it's super fun to do maths with your friends. So I think my advice in general is try to find people that you feel confident with.
There's quite a common theme that we've got going on here, and in a way almost feeding into Karen's suggestion at the very beginning of finding a life coach. And I never knew that this was going to be one of the key messages that would be coming out of this, but find people who support you and nurture you. And that feeds into community as well again. So a lot of these things are tying together. Tatiana, would you like to pick up on this as well? What advice you would give?
Well, I also found that discussing with fellow colleagues has always been the most helpful thing for me. So I might have even, discussed it with, I think I've been very lucky that I found many colleagues I could talk to throughout the years, and many of them experienced the same, went through similar stuff, and they were all very, very open about the struggles or their success or whatever was the topic at the moment. And I feel like all of them were really eager to kind of help in the best possible way. Was it listening? Was it giving an advice? Was it supporting? Was it sharing something related to work or to applications? And this made really the difference. And I think it's really, really important that it stays this way.
Thank you so much. Now, I'm wondering, I would love to open things up now, if we may, to the audience. But what we're going to do, if we do that, is we're going to stop the recording now so that you can, because we've sort of had an outline of what sort of questions I might ask to this point in time, and something might take you off guard, and I don't want you to put yourselves in a vulnerable situation. So if we switch off the recording now,